Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're going through 3 running backs going off the board after pick 100 in ESPN Sleeper and NFL Redraft leagues. These 3 running backs present us with varying amounts of immediate upside, but I think all present us with a ton of maximum potential upside. And I think that the guys that will give you more immediate production are obviously going off the board a little bit before some of these other guys. But I think if you get each one of these 3, or at least one of these 3 running backs on your roster a little bit later in your drafts, you're setting yourself up for a ton of potential upside, especially when it matters most in the fantasy playoffs. And so the first running back we're going to discuss here is Jordan Mason of the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings ended up trading for Jordan Mason this offseason, which is one indication that they intend to use him. He's going off the board as the pick 105 overall, and he's going off the board as the running back 43 in ESPN leagues, 37 in Sleeper, and 38 in NFL leagues. I think that obviously it's better to, you're getting more of a value in ESPN than some of these other ones, but I think he's going to finish significantly higher than the RB 37, which is the highest he's going in terms of his general ADP. This guy has a ton of upside. And so the first thing we want to take a look at here is their depth chart. So they have second-year quarterback J.J. McCarthy, who's essentially a rookie. As we all know, he missed the season with a meniscus injury. But in terms of his running back competition, Aaron Jones is definitely a very talented back. He is, however, 30 years old. If you take a look at the left-hand portion of your screen, in 2018, he played 12 games, in 2019, 16, 2020, 14, 2021, 15, a full slate of games in 2022, 11 in 2023, and 17 in 2024. So we have seen that he's missed time sporadically throughout his career. Now, he did manage to end up playing 17 games this past season, but he was banged up throughout various portions of the season. And so, Ty Chandler's his other competition. I'm not worried at all. I think he's going to get an immediate goal line role. So there was a stat where Aaron Jones finished with 13 carries for -2 yards. I believe the stat was within the 5-yard line, but it may have been within the 10-yard line or the red zone in general. Regardless, this screams inefficiency and an inability to get the ball into the end zone. Well, Jordan Mason, I don't think is going to have any of these problems and is just built better to be the goal line back. So I think he's first of all going to definitely see a goal line role and get a split of the carries. But then I think in the event that we have an Aaron Jones injury, I think he is so much more talented than Ty Chandler that he is going to be a true workhorse in this offense, which boasts, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, new rookie wide receiver Ty Felton, TJ Hawkinson, definitely a star-studded cast out there. Now, when we further look into some advanced stats from Jordan Mason this past season, his true yards per carry, which takes away runs of 15+ yards, to get you a better idea of generally how you're producing on a per carry average. Well, his 4.8 true yards per carry was 7th among running backs. His 5.4 yards per touch were 9th. His 25.6 juke rate, which is his ability to force missed tackles, was 11th. 42 evaded tackles, which was 30th, but you have to keep in mind once again that he wasn't the RB1, for the entirety of the season. He was splitting. He was basically not even used when McCaffrey was there, right? And then he did miss some time, obviously, and Garendo got some time down the stretch, but that's still impressive. Now, if you take a look at his explosive rating, which is rushes of 15+ yards or receptions of more than 20 yards, his 120.2 explosive rating was 4th among running backs, and his 12 breakaway runs was good for 9th. This guy was absolutely explosive this past season, and I think he has a significant amount of upside in this offense. Now, when we take a look at the Vikings offseason moves, they added Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, who I do think will probably start for them at guard and center. Significant additions to the offensive line. Then they drafted Donovan Jackson in the first round out of Ohio State. He's probably going to be starting at guard. We'll see what the health looks like for him. But to have Darisaw, Jackson, Kelly, Fries, and O'Neal, I think this is going to be a much better than average offensive line. I think they're going to be pretty good in pass protection, and I think they're going to be good in the run game as well. And so I think having a good creative play calling head coach such as KOC, having a significantly upgraded offensive line, and then weapons all around him in the passing game, I think this is going to make the Vikings running game way, way more effective than it would otherwise be. Now, let's take a look at who's going both before and after him in drafts. So we have Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Jones, his running back mate, going off the board as the running back 26. Then Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, Quinshon Judkins, B-Rob, Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren, Cam Skattebo, Etienne, Javonte, Najee, then Jordan Mason, then Ramondre, Charbonnet, Dobbins, and Rashad White. With Isaiah Pacheco, there's always a chance that he returns to his pre-injury self and performs decently. I understood that it was a good offensive environment in the sense of you have Mahomes and Andy Reid there, but I always thought he was overhyped, and he hasn't ever produced where his ADP was in previous seasons. Aaron Jones, I think he's a talented player, but I don't think he gets the goal line role, and I think he splits work to where I just don't see him as being a much more favorable start each week than Jordan Mason personally. Plus, obviously, he's much older. And I just think that him going this much higher or higher at all than Jordan Mason really makes no sense, at least in my opinion. Then Caleb Johnson, there's definitely a path to a ton of volume, so I get it. Pollard, same deal. Quinshon Judkins, I think his ADP is going to significantly fall due to the domestic issue that he's in right now. Wouldn't be shocked if we didn't get anything out of him this season, to be honest with you. But we'll have to see how that plays out. B-Rob, he's fine. Tyron Tracy and Scatterboo, that's kind of a toss-up. I think we'll see some kind of split from them. Jaylen Warren makes no sense to me. I don't think he takes over the backfield significantly with an injury to Caleb Johnson. I think he's a talented player, but I just don't understand him going over Jordan Mason personally. ETN could definitely, bounce back. Javonte, I think he's pretty cooked, but maybe another year removed from that multi-ligament knee injury. Najee with the eye thing, I think he's probably going to plummet as well. Stevenson, I just think is a jag. Zach Charbonnet has a ton of upside. He historically has really done nothing, though, when Kenneth Walker is active. So we'll see kind of what their new offensive coordinator has in mind in terms of their usage. Dobbins is great, but is just never healthy. And then Rachaad White was actually low-key very good this past season for us in fantasy when you consider that his backfield was overtaken. But I really think that a lot of the guys ahead of him, possibly not though, Caleb Johnson and Pollard specifically, are just much worse bets than Jordan Mason because I just don't see the significant upside with these guys. There's significant risk. And I just think that a lot of these guys are also in much worse offenses with much less potential touchdown volume. The second player we're going to take a look at here is Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals, who is going off the board as the RB48, the 141st overall pick. He's going off the board on average as the running back 50 in ESPN, 48 in Sleeper, 55 in NFL. I think all of these are much too low. I think he starts to eat into James Conner's touches this season. And I think he was quite good, as I'm going to show you, in limited opportunities this past season. And so taking a look at the Arizona Cardinals depth chart, we have Kyler Murray, a good dual threat quarterback. Definitely helps out the run game with his ability to scramble or just run the ball directly himself. When you take a look at his depth chart competition in terms of the running back room specifically, if you take a look at the left-hand portion of your screen at James Conner's history of games played, he's played 14, 13, 10, 13, 15, 13, 13, and 16 games. He somehow managed to stay healthy for 16 weeks for us in fantasy football this past season. Did miss the last game with injury. I doubt that happens again. It had not happened one time up until this past season. So while I do think he's more talented than Trey Benson, he's dealt with injuries throughout the entirety of his career and is getting much, much older now with a lot of mileage. Amari DeMarcado is a fine pass catcher, kind of scat back. I don't really think he's a threat to take over significant touches in the run game specifically from Trey Benson in the event of a James Conner injury. But then, you have MHJ. I think he's an absolute stud, going to prove a lot of people wrong that are doubting him after his rookie year. Then you have Michael Wilson, I think a fine real-life wide receiver too, Dortch in the slot, and Trey McBride manning the slot and the tight end position. Definitely a lot of competition in terms of the passing game. But as far as runners, I think James Conner is going to probably have a pretty hefty share of some kind of split between him and Benson. But I think the upside of Trey Benson in this offense is a top 10 running back. I think he would be scoring a significant amount of touchdowns. And if you take a look at the bottom of your screen here, when you take a look at his carries, he had 63 on the season for 291 yards. That was 4.62 yards per carry and one rushing touchdown, including catching all 6 of his targets for 59 receiving yards. When you take a look at the total volume and total production, it doesn't appear to be that impressive. But 4.62 yards per carry when you were pegged as an extremely raw runner with very poor vision, I thought was pretty impressive. There were times where he would miss his hole for sure, but he would just make up for it by having one pretty much every game explosive run. I just think he's so talented. I think with the volume, he would produce ridiculous games on the ground. And I think he's a more than serviceable enough receiver with soft hands and can run vertically out of the backfield that I think the upside in this offense is magnificent. When we take a look at the left-hand portion of your screen at the additions made, there's really nothing in terms of competition at the running back position. It doesn't make sense that they would really need to invest given they have James Conner and Trey Benson, but that is something to note. Really nothing along the offensive line besides Jake Curran. Probably not going to do very much, more of a depth signing. But when we take a look at their run block rating per PFF this past season, they were 14th, so slightly above average. It's more than serviceable enough unit, and I think that they're going to be in enough of a positive game script now that they've made significant defensive additions this offseason, both in the draft and through free agency, that I think they're going to be much more in games now, and I think it's only going to provide more total volume on the ground for Trey Benson and really any one of these running backs that's getting enough volume to be startable for us in fantasy. Now, when you take a look at who's going both before and behind him, we have players like Charbonnet, Dobbins, White, Spears, Blue, Tootin, Eckler, Garendo, Bigsby going ahead of him, and then players such as Ray Davis, Algier, Ford, Chubb, Allen, and Wright going after him. With Zach Charbonnet, I understand, and I would probably take him over Trey Benson as well. We've seen him produce as an elite RB1 in spurts when he's actually given the volume with the Kenneth Walker injury. Definitely understandable. With Dobbins, you're probably going to get more of an immediate result, but he's injury prone. And what is the upside if he is splitting work with RJ Harvey? I think the upside is pretty decent, but he's just such an injury risk that I'd probably look for somebody else. Rashad White, I think is definitely fine. I think we do have to worry potentially about the departure of Cohen. We'll see what Grizzard looks like. Tajay Spears, definitely a lot of upside, just is just kind of always hurt. Jaden Blue, there were reports of him being lazy. I don't really pay much credence to that. I think he's a fine pass catcher, but I think he's more of a scat back that would have to be really efficient. And I think he's a better receiver than he is a runner of the football. With Bashol Tootin, he now has a hamstring strain, I believe it is. So we'll have to see what he kind of looks like. I do think that he's probably going to start out the year significantly as the RB3 behind both Etienne and Bigsby. So I do find it interesting that Bigsby goes after him. I think he's going to get more immediate volume, probable goal line role, and has a bunch of upside. I think is a David Montgomery type of player probably this season. Austin Eckler, I don't understand this at all. Why is he going here? Yuck. Garendo, tons of upside. I can definitely understand that. We've seen the upside that he's given us when both McCaffrey and Mason were out. Ray Davis, a bunch of upside too. I could definitely understand that. I think he looks good. Tyler Algier is another guy that probably not going to give you very much with Bijan Robinson healthy, but tons of upside and should have the backfield to himself. I think he's also a good candidate. Jerome Ford, I don't think he's very good. He's kind of your 10 for 18 rusher, and then he gets a random 40-yard gain, and then it looks efficient. Nick Chubb, I think, looked pretty washed, but with Mixon out, there's the potential for him to get a goal line role in this Texans offense. The line's pretty bad, though, so I don't know about that. Braylon Allen, I think, was a little bit overhyped, but I think he's a solid talent, and he's probably going to see a little bit of volume immediately, kind of like a Tank Bigsby, in my opinion, although I think Breece Hall is significantly more talented. And then Jalen Wright, I think, does have a ton of upside. We just didn't really get to see much of it this past season. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Made Shack, Infamy MTG, and AYAYOB. Thank you for your support, guys. As you know, I'm unable to collect any revenue because I like to do film breakdowns. The NFL and YouTube aren't the highest on that, so they get copyrighted a lot. And yeah, without you guys, this channel would not be running right now. So thank you for real for your support. If you would like to become a member, you could become part of the All-Star tier for $8 a month on my Patreon. You'll have access to private Discord channel where we have both real life and fantasy football talks. I'll give you a detailed roster review based on your specific league settings and starting lineup requirements, as well as detailed trade advice and different strategies you can employ in order to make super teams for you guys. You'll also have private access to live streams that are going to be unlisted on YouTube, so nobody else that is not a member can join. And finally, you'll have the ability to see videos at least one day early and have the ability to suggest videos that you would like me to create for you. So once again, thank you guys for your support. And if you would like to become a member, the link is going to be in the comment section. Thanks. And the third and final player is somebody that I wanted to go dig deep. So we're going with DJ Giddens of the Indianapolis Colts here. He's going off the board as ERB 67 on average, pick 213 overall. So not only outside of the top 100, but outside of the top 200 picks. ESPN doesn't even have an ADP for him. Sleeper has 64 overall and 77 overall on NFL.com. I think this guy could be an absolute steal. And so when you take a look at the depth chart here, A-Rich and Daniel Jones don't like the quarterback position, if we're being honest. But, you know, the reports have been positive with A-Rich. He's apparently, as of the time of me making this video, strung together a couple of good practices in a row. I think the running game is going to be efficient regardless as to who the quarterback is. Now, in terms of his respective competition, you have Jonathan Taylor, absolute stud, former first-round pick. But if you take a look at the left-hand portion of your screen here, he's played 15, 17, 11, 10, and 14 games. He has not been a staple of health. I think that there's a good chance that he probably misses some time if history repeats itself here. And while he is very good, he is getting older, has a lot of mileage on him. And so I think at some point he's going to break down, and I'm willing to take a bet on DJ Giddens outside of the top 200 in what should be a very potent offense with a pretty good offensive line and great scheming. Then, you know, the surrounding weapons of Pittman, Pierce, Downs, A.D. Mitchell, that's fine. Tyler Warren, I think, is going to be a stud at the tight end position. But I do think this is going to be a run-first offense. Now, when we take a look at his stats here at the bottom portion of your screen, he had 89 carries for 518 yards as a freshman and 6 touchdowns, 8 for 98 through the air. But when you take a look at his sophomore season, he went off 223 rush attempts, 1,226 yards, and 13 touchdowns, along with 29 receptions, 323 receiving yards with a 9.9% target share. That's nice. And so you see that he essentially repeated himself again this next season, a little bit lower on the touchdowns and receiving yards, but more rushing yards this season. But he's shown that he can handle a good bit of work, and he's both a threat in the running game and the receiving game. I think that he is a better receiver than Jonathan Taylor already. I think he could potentially see the work in the passing game because Khalil Herbert is really the only other guy besides Taylor, and I just don't really think Khalil Herbert's particularly special. I think that DJ Giddens, who it did look very good in a play on X today, by the way, very fast and shifty. I think he has a ton of upside, and if he were to start, I think you could start him with confidence as a very high upside running back. And so when you take a look at the key free agent signings, you have Ballantyne, Bynum, Charvarius Ward, and Gallimore on the defensive side, and then you have Daniel Jones and Khalil Herbert on the offensive side. Really, I think Daniel Jones, if anything, having another quarterback to push A-Rich to be a better quarterback is always going to be good. And like I said with Khalil Herbert, that really doesn't scare me. I don't think he's anything special. But if you take a look at the right-hand portion of your screen, Indianapolis per PFF was tied for 4th best in run block rating this past season. I don't see any reason for this to decrease particularly. They have a strong offensive line headed by Quentin Nelson. Good scheming by Shane Steichen. I think he's one of the most underrated play callers in the NFL. Say what you want about him as a head coach per se. I think he's been dealt a bad hand with Anthony Richardson. But I think he's making the most out of it, and he has a pretty potent offense when you consider how poor their quarterback play has been. And so when we take a look at who's going both ahead and behind DJ Giddens in drafts, we have Dylan Sampson, Hunt, Johnson, Hill, Lloyd, Quorum, Shipley, Mostert, Smith, Zach Moss, and Miles Sanders. And then behind him, we have Hunter, McLaughlin, Trevor Etienne, Neal, and Mitchell. With Dylan Sampson, I think he's going to rise significantly with the new Quinshon Judkins news. So he's probably not even going to be remotely close to this spot by the end of the offseason. Then you have Kareem Hunt. I think he's just going to be replaced. I don't think he's anything particularly special. He's declined significantly as a player with a lot more usage and age. Roschon Johnson, I think he could potentially be the David Montgomery in a Bears offense under Ben Johnson. I think there's a decent amount of upside there with a low risk. Justice Hill, I think, is just going to be a scat back. I don't think he really inherits a significant role if Henry gets injured. Marshawn Lloyd's hurt already. Blake Corum looked okay in spurts this past season. Hunter, I think, going a little bit later than him. I would make the bet on him. Newest drafted running back, more athletic. Will Shipley, I think, is a nothing burger. If Saquon goes down, I think he's going to be okay, see a good bit of volume, but I think it'll be a split backfield. Raheem Mostert, I think we've seen the best of him with the Dolphins. Rashard Smith, I think, has a good bit of upside in a potential Jerry McKinnon type of usage, but I don't think he's ever going to be a true Jahmyr Gibbs type of player or Kamara or anything. Zach Moss, I think, has his stretches, but just hasn't really put a full season together yet. I think he's probably on the decline. Miles Sanders was washed when he entered the league. I'm kidding, but he's been washed for a minute. Probably not going to be anything. I don't understand him being drafted ahead of Giddens. And then, Hunter, I think, has a ton of upside. McLaughlin, I think, is one of these scat backs. It's just never going to be a Gibbs. Trevor Etienne could potentially see some work if there was an injury to Chuba Hubbard. But once again, I wouldn't put significant stock in that. I think he has more of a interesting path to getting a ton of volume than some of these other guys. Devin Neal, I think, could be a very good value as well if Kamara were to go down, and we've seen what his other running back mate has done, be injured and be in the doghouse. And then we finally have Elijah Mitchell, who's made of glass, has never been healthy once in his life, but has been working ahead of Kareem Hunt as of recently. If he would ever stay healthy, I think he's a good player. He just is never healthy. So I think that there are some players here that offer a ton of upside, but I think DJ Giddens is one of the best picks in this range. And once again, you are getting this guy after pick 200 overall. Yeah, so I think all three of these running backs have a ton of upside. I think that obviously with players like Jordan Mason, there's more of an immediate role, but that's also why they would be going significantly higher than players such as DJ Giddens. But I also think that there's tons of running backs with a ton of potential that are very good values where they're going. I really like getting a bunch of these late round running backs and just praying that the starter goes down. One thing I like to do to maximize upside in redraft is chase other people's handcuffs, because then there's the potential that you have even more starting running backs at one time, rather than limiting yourself to just having a whole backfield in a redraft setting. But another thing is, I want to thank anybody who's returning to these videos. It's been a minute since I've uploaded. I'm going to get on a more consistent uploading schedule as the NFL season ramps up. I look forward to creating a bunch of good content for you guys, doing these film breakdowns that you guys love this past season. I love making content. Like I said, I'm going to get back into more of a regular flow. If there's anything you'd like to see, any ideas of content that you'd like, let me know below in the comment section. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Please feel free to subscribe to my Patreon. Once again, I'm unable to collect any revenue because everything gets copyrighted when I do these film breakdowns. So once again, feel free to subscribe. If you can't, I definitely understand, and I appreciate it if you just subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Thanks, and have a good day.